Trust always in me, my emissaries. They will soon return to death. Their second lives shall prove brief. Our light shall overcome their darkness. You have proven yourselves, but more danger awaits.
Greetings, ladies and laddies, and welcome back to the realms of a cursed city. In the last episode of our speed painting series, we painted Octran Glimscry, a character with many secrets and unknown agendas. Today it's gonna be a bit more straightforward, as we're going to paint the light mage Celona Zeitengale, whose righteous fury burns as bright as the fire she's summoning. I played her the most during our quest in the Cursed City, and was really looking forward to painting her. So, without further delay, let's get going. Before we put down any paint, we come to the back of the mini, more specifically to the pennons flopping about. These would be quite the hindrance during the painting process, so we just remove them for the time being and treat Celona and her pennons individually. Okay, now. We start with a rich Bordeaux and paint Celona's robe. Right off the bat, a very satisfying experience, both for me and hopefully for you watching. After all parts of her robe are fully painted, we take a dark grey with a blue tint to it and paint the holster of her daggers, as well as whatever this thing is called. Let's just call it a collar for now. This paint is not as opaque as the Bordeaux though, so we definitely need to give both parts a second coat. Switching to a bright white, we paint her loincloth and the fabric cowl on her head. After that we move on to painting her sleeves in a rich purple, before taking a khaki color to paint the forward facing area of her huge collar. Next, we take a rich brown for the two pouches and the belt across her chest. For the holster of her mace though, I thought we'd switch it up to a mustard yellow for a bit more variety. Then we turn to her very interesting hat and paint it in a rich burgundy. In the paint job presented by GW's Heavy Metal team, Celona's staff is solid metal, but I personally think that this would be a bit too bright and definitely quite inconvenient for her to carry. So I decided to pick the dark grey from earlier again and paint the shaft with that instead. Now it's our true metallic metal's time to shine, starting off with silver on her mace. After that we paint the lower spike on her staff, the 3 stilettos on her front, as well as the braces on her arms. Then we come to the true metallic gold, and give both of her masterful casted pauldrons a sufficient coat. The gold I was using proved to be quite transparent, as you can see here, so we definitely need to lay a few coats over one another to make it look like solid metal. Here you can see the difference between 1 and 2 coats of gold. Quite the difference, huh? After those rather obvious parts, we switch to a finer brush and take care of all of the decorative ornaments dotted around the mini, especially those on her hat and collar. All of that taken care of, we just need to paint the skin on her face, as well as both of her hands. And with that, all of the base colors have been fully applied, but before we can move on to the wash stage, we still have to take care of the extra part with the many pennons. Here we start with the same paint as we used on the collar. Then we take a very light khaki and paint the paper pennons themselves. For the ornaments, we take the true metallic metals again, painting these clips in a bright silver, and the comet in the middle with gold. And there we are! Both parts are now fully painted in their respective base colors, and ready for the wash. Here we start off with our regular black wash, although we don't want to apply it as heavily as we often do. Also, black won't be the only wash we need for this mini. For the front facing part of the collar, I'd recommend to use a brown or dark yellow wash. And for her white loincloth, I'm using a contrast paint, Apothecary White from Citadel in this case. I highly recommend this paint when working with white, as it doesn't stain like a regular wash would do, and the shadows it leaves in the recesses are also a lot milder. Same goes for the pennons on the back, of course. The upper grey part gets a black wash, and the paper stripes get a brown wash, where we want to especially focus on the top and bottom of each stripe. While we're waiting for the wash to dry, we can use the time to paint up the base as we usually do. After we laid the foundation with our trusty texture paint style and mud, we take a mustard yellow and dab it in random places onto the base. Then we take a light beige to dry brush it over and finish it off with a smooth black trim after elegantly forgetting to paint the cobblestones. And that's it for the speed paint. Celona Zeitengale is now fully painted up to a solid game and battle ready standard, absolutely capable of smiting any foul demon out of existence. Before I started on Celona, I reckon she would be quite easy to paint, featuring mostly flat and easily accessible areas after all. However, getting the paint in place and keeping the edges of her cast sharp, for example on her loincloth and her collar, was quite a lot more challenging than I thought, so make sure to take your time and keep it relaxed while working on her. Now, Lady Zeitengale looks already great as she is, but trust me when I say that there's still quite a lot really exciting stuff we can do with her. So I would like to use the next few minutes to show you guys a few optional and slightly more advanced steps to even further upgrade this already awesome looking mini. Just as in the very beginning of this episode, we take a Bordeaux red and reinforce the color on her robe. This really helps to bring the mild folds out, as we leave the wash in the recesses and focus only on the areas that catch the light from above. After that, we take a pure white and highlight the cowl on her head, as well as the loincloth. Painting trims with the tip of your brush can be really hard and messy, so if you have the option available, you might want to angle your brush and apply the paint with the brush's flank for a smooth and convenient edge highlight. Moving on to her accessories, we pick our old faithful blue tinted medium dark grey and highlight the holster for her stiletto daggers. For the fine lines on the back of her collar though, I think we should pick something more eye-catching, like a light grey or white. For the lines on top, we switch back to the previous blue tinted grey though. Now we come to her pink sleeves, for which we take a rosy terracotta to pick out the folds, and after that, turn our attention to all her leather parts, using the same colors for the highlights as we did for the base coat. When we come to her khaki collar, we pick the very light beige we used for the paper pennons as our highlighting color. Thin your paint well with water to get a smooth coverage, even though this means that we're in for a really long time here. Like, I'm really serious, this step takes time and focus. After the collar, we mix a bit of our skin color into the khaki and use it to highlight the skin, which is thankfully very easy to do. Now we come to our true metallic metals again. Here we just take a bright silver and a bright gold and pick out all of the spots that reflect the most light. We take care of weapons, accessories, and all of her ornaments, after which we are basically done with Celona herself. When we come to the extra part, we first pick the same paint we used for the lines on her back and color the lines in between the pennons, as well as the upper arch of this thing. Then we highlight the true metallic metals, before picking the very light khaki again to highlight the paper stripes just as we did with the loincloth. Here we just want to cover the edges of the stripes, and the result should look something like this. Quite cool for sure, but the real fun is only just beginning. See, Celona has a lot of runes written on these pennons, which really enhance her vibes as a high priestess of some sorts. Some of these runes can be seen on her promo pics, but by far not all. So I sat down and copied all the runes I could see in the pics, and then basically filled in the gaps. I really had fun doing this, and quickly got a feeling for this fictional writing, as I created these lines rune after rune, mimicking the structure I saw in the pictures. Once everything was laid out, I picked a very fine brush and repeated this step in Bordeaux on the model itself. Here's a picture of all 10 sentences I wrote, in case any one of you would like to follow this tutorial literally to the letter. I know, this may look really hard, and don't get me wrong, it does take a long time to put down. I think it took me about an hour of hands-on painting time to bring all of the runes on the paper, but by Sigmar, it was the most fun I had with this model, which is why I highly recommend you to try it out too. On the end of each row, we quickly paint the sigil of the two-tailed comet, and we're done! Both sides of the pennons have all the writing in place, and we're left with an amazing accessory to decorate our High Priestess with. One small thing before we're finished. I took a light orange and painted another two-tailed comet right on her loincloth, and with that, we can call the speed paint officially done. Light Mage and High Priestess Celona Zeitengale is fully painted up, and I think she looks absolutely amazing. As I said, she's so far my favorite character on the board, but I never thought that she might actually be my favorite character from the painting side as well. If you're following me along on this project with your own miniatures at home, you will have 3 out of 9, a third for the mathematically gifted, of the heroes done. As well as the other 51 villains and creatures of the Cursed City box set. As always, I'll have a full guide listing all of the exact paints that I used for this paint job down in the description of the video. And should you have any questions, maybe a couple of suggestions, be my guest and share your thoughts in the comment section. Our hero strike force is steadily growing, and although they are quite powerful already, when it comes down to melee, they lack someone to hold the line. So we will continue on the flower power with the badass knight Imelda Brusco in the next episode of our speed painting series. And if you would like to see her paint job, as well as the other Heroes of the Cursed City box set, feel free to hit the subscribe button. As I am really looking forward to seeing you again in my next video. Until then, take care.